It's this house. It's this house, guys. The reason I keep having these long spells of no video, no update, I keep having these ideas for videos that I want to produce, but I can't. It's because I keep falling into despair every now and then at the hopelessness of my situation. And a lot of it is to do with the fact that I live in this house. We were supposed to be moving house in June of last year, as soon as the new building works had been finished. Well, we thought that it would take no more than a couple of months. It has now been 7 months. At this rate, it's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if we had to wait another 5 and we ended up waiting a whole year here. I'm amazed that I've been able to last as long as I have in this tiny little house. Look, I love my grandparents more than anything else in the world, and even now, I still cannot believe that they've managed to tolerate having me live in their house for as long as they have. Because Lord knows, there's barely enough space in here for anyone. It's pretty ironic now that I think about it. The house where they're living, it used to be an hotel. It was quite a large hotel overlooking the seafront of the Solent in the 1980s, but then it got converted into a block of flats. So all the former guest rooms are now just are single unit apartments for mainly for old age pensioners, and my grandparents live in, I think, one of the largest. But there's just no room for there's barely any room for one guest, let alone 3 of us. As I've talked about this before, I'm certain I have, how there's only 2 bedrooms, one of them's a spare room, you know, for a guest. There's a master bedroom, which is where my grandparents spend the night. My brother and I are sleeping in the lounge. And my mum gets the spare room because, of course, she's the main she's the head of the family, and that's just how things are, I guess. And I don't have a problem with that. It's just the limited space here. The fact that I'm consciously aware the entire time that this is not my house, it places all kinds of limits and impositions on what I can and cannot do. Like, psychologically, if you know that you're staying in a space that is not your own, it puts you under stress because there are certain things that you can't get away with if you're a guest in somebody else's house. Like, for instance, if you want to tidy your room, it's kind of difficult to do that if you're not in your own room but somebody else's. They might take issue with you, tidying things up, because they might want certain objects to be in certain places and not others. Or it's just that it is simply knowing that you can't arrange things how you like as long as you're a guest in another person's house, because it's not your house. I miss the freedom of being able to do that. Sorry, the thing just moved a bit. I miss the freedom of being in control of my immediate surroundings. I've complained a lot about the last house that I was living in, but at least I had my own room. I don't have that anymore. I've already talked about the lack of space, the fact that there's literally only 2 bedrooms, and the place where my brother and I are staying is a lounge. Yeah, we're staying in the lounge. There's a sofa bed which I sleep in, which is not too bad, all things considered. I'm not complaining about the quality of my bed. I'm certainly not complaining about how nice and how lovely my grandparents are. But it's just not good for any of us. Deep in the back of my mind, I fear that they must be getting tired of us holding up with them. They must get to a point where they miss having their peace and quiet. They miss how things were when we would just come in and occasionally visit. Because that's how I would feel if I had, say, my ungrateful grandchildren, my indigent grandchildren who couldn't afford a place of their own. And I'm doing the best I can. See, I have... wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll get to that later. I want to move out of this place as soon as possible, and I do have a plan to do that. But currently, I'm not in any position to move out. But I'll talk about my plans to move out a little bit later. Oh, this thing keeps... I have to reposition this camera. There we go. So first of all, it's the frustration of being in this tiny cramped space. In a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of back when I was in Canada and I lived in a hostel for 1 whole month. You know, hostels are good for short-term stays, like if you're just passing through and you need a place to stay for the night, but you can't stay in a hostel for a whole month. There's no personal space there. There's you're going to be spending a night in a room with 6 people, and you know, for what it's worth, for all my complaints here, one thing I am grateful for is that at least I don't have to share a room with 5 or 6 people again. It's just my brother this time, except during special family occasions when, for instance, my sister or sisters or other guests come round and we all have to spend the night in there, and that's an entirely different matter. All the clutter lying around, a lot of which is mine, but I can't tidy it away because there isn't really any explicit permission in terms of where I can and can't put it. Do you know what I mean? There are all these problems. I'm the kind of person who likes tidiness and order. I get stressed out and annoyed when things are lying around. But on the other hand, if you're in a foreign space, in an unfamiliar space where you can't just put simple, ordinary things, or you're not sure if or where you can, what spaces you can use as a receptacle to put things away, that worries you. Well, it worries me because it means I either have to suffer the untidiness, the slovenliness of my current state of living, or I have to run the risk of annoying my grandparents, Papa and Grandma, by taking what isn't mine, taking things that are theirs, or rearranging things that are theirs, and then having to answer for when they complain why things aren't where they remember leaving them. And do you know how many times I've left things and they've got lying around and they've ended up going missing? This place, it's weird. I have a theory that Papa and Grandma's house, my grandparents' house, actually, it is home to a secret interdimensional portal where things go missing, they disappear and are never seen again. I remember when I was 10 or 11 years old, at some point on the island where I came here during the summer holidays, I think I left my copy of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, and I did really well on it. I had at least a dozen level 100s on that save file, and I had Deoxys, which I got from a Pokemon event in Croydon for my 10th birthday. And it disappeared one day, and I never saw it again. To this day, I don't know what the heck happened to it. I ended up losing my Pokemon Sapphire as well, but that's, yeah, you know, part of me wonders if maybe both of those, to this day, part of me wonders if somewhere in a corner, maybe underneath the upholstery or the carpet or somewhere, both of those games are lying around and they will not be discovered until centuries later when archaeologists dig up this place. Or perhaps when building renovators are fixing up this place and changing it to comply with the newest health and safety standards, or they're converting it into an hotel again. Anyway, speaking of objects lying around and disappearing forever, there was a selfie stick that I ordered from Amazon. That's disappeared. I don't know where that's gone. Luckily, it was only $5.99, so it was pretty easy to replace. Like, I'm not really bothered that I lost that, but you know, it's irritating when things like this happen and you don't plan or account for them happening. And my wallet. That's another thing. My wallet's just disappeared. I know that my wallet's lying around here. This is one of the main reasons why I've been so inactive. And Finding Gnosis, he's do not watch. He's constantly been inviting me to show up on his streams every now and then, but I've kept telling him I can't go because I'm in a bad mood, and I'm in a bad mood because my wallet went missing. Now, this happened in late December. I remember the last thing I did with my wallet was I went shopping at Tesco's to get some crisps and I think some wine as well. I'm not sure. And I definitely took my wallet out there and then. And that was the last time I remember having it. At some point I think this would have been the 20th or the 21st, my theory is that I must have left it lying around somewhere, and to this day I don't know what happened to it. Perhaps it slipped and phased into the interdimensional portal that exists somewhere in this house, and now it's gone without a trace. Or maybe there are these magic goblins that exist here, which sneakily they take things. they snatch things and they run off with them, and they take them to their enchanted magical goblin realm that exists somewhere in the space between dimensions. One of these days, maybe when I die, if I have an opportunity to discover the truth or ask and have any question I want answered, I'm probably going to want to find out what happened to my copy of Fire Red or Sapphire, Fire Red and Sapphire, and my wallet. Where did that go? It doesn't really matter, actually. I mean, because in the days since then, I've ordered myself a brand new wallet. There was a leather and suede shop in Newport. And since this is still brand new, it has that lovely smell. Don't you just love the smell of leather? I do. I love the smell of leather. So, and it's got a very nice finish. So I got myself a new wallet, and I managed to cancel and replace all my cards. And luckily, I know you guys are thinking, what if my wallet got stolen? What if it's not lying around? Well, I'm fairly certain that didn't happen. First of all, because I remember the last thing I did with my wallet is I used it to buy something. Logically speaking, it can't be anywhere else other than this house. And second, there's been no suspicious activity registered on any of my cards, on any of my online statements. So I've had I've had all those cards cancelled and replaced. So that's sort of been dealt with, but it does raise the question, what will be the next thing to go missing? And realistically, what is there that I can do to prepare myself for it happening again? Because you can't really prepare yourself for when things go missing. You don't know when it's going to go missing. You don't know what's going to go missing. And don't give me this, oh, well, as long as you just practice strategies, as long as you try and remember where you leave things. It's like telling a blind person to just open your eyes. Like, in my experience, that just doesn't help me. It's like you're going to be telling me things that I haven't already heard a zillion times. This is just one of those unique problems that I have to deal with. Things of mine occasionally go missing, and because I don't have a completely 100% lucid memory of every waking moment of my life, because I don't have an eidetic memory, I cannot recall with 100% clarity where I leave things. But in any case, the fact that weeks have gone and my wallet still hasn't been found really goes to show that it's for the best that I move on and get a different one. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that happens when you live in a cramped little house like this. So anyway, as you can imagine, this is one of the main reasons why I keep falling into these spells where I don't feel like making videos. Oh, I haven't even mentioned the fact that because I don't have a room, I don't really have a desk or a little hub where I can gather all of my belongings, where I can sit down, open up my computer and do things like apply for jobs or do some online training in anticipation of my next job interview, because I've got another job interview coming up in February. And this is a serious, actual, proper interview. This is going to be for, you know, a surveying job in a different city. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with the job I have currently. You know, I'm still working at that, but that's just sort of this is a career I'm going for. What I have now is just, you know, it's just something to keep my head above the water. But there's so many, you know, serious things, you know, serious ways I like to spend my leisure time. And having a desk, having my own sort of desk and my own hub, which will remain undisturbed and where I can sit down and do whatever I want. Well, I don't have that here because my brother and I both share the same room, and my brother's bed is right next to the place that I would normally call my desk. He keeps putting his belongings there. He keeps putting his Vaseline, his moisturizer, his Nintendo Switch charger, and all this crap. And there's nowhere else that I can put it. And I can't tell him to take his stuff and put it elsewhere because there is no elsewhere. This isn't our house. You understand? There aren't any cupboards. And he's in the same position as I am, so he probably feels the same way. It's just that he's better at dealing with it, probably. Maybe he's just, these little things just don't bother him as much. But I like having tidiness and order. And I don't like being in a position where I have to impose my will on other people and tell them what to do. I don't like having to tell people to get out or move their belongings, even though I am his older brother. I just don't like being in that position. And this is something that I could all avoid if only I had my own personal space. So that, realistically, that is going to be what I'm going to plan for this year. I'm 31 years old. I'm a grown adult. And I'm running out of years where I can call myself a young man. So it's about damn time that I got my own personal space. So I'm going to be saving up some money. And by the way, I'm trying to plan. I'm trying to sort of orient myself to this is all on the provision that I don't get the job as a surveyor, because the job market, you know what the job market's like. I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't end up getting the surveying job, but obviously if that happens, well, that's an entirely different subject. But anyway, I'm going to be saving up a little bit of money until I have enough to find a rented room, pay the deposit, and stay there for a couple months. And also, my mum's been telling me, no, you should save money. The house is going to be finished in a few months' time. Will it? Because I seem to remember that's what we all thought back in June of last year. And funnily enough, the story as to why the house is taking such a long time, why it's taken so much longer than we all thought, that's a subject for another video. But there's a whole lot of family drama with regard to that. But yeah, that's a story in its own right. Basically, my mum did something rather silly. She tried to she basically subcontracted the building works to her sister and her younger son. And my mother's sister, right, she has a bit of a reputation for being, well, for exaggerating or lying about her skills or her credentials in a lot of things. And basically, long story short, she did a bodge job. She did a bodge job, a shoddy job in doing the building works. She didn't wire up the electrics correctly, and she charged an exorbitant fee for carrying out the building works. And honestly, what's taken my mother months to learn? Really, I could have saved her months of her time by telling her this is a bad idea. Just go with a professional contractor instead. Do it by the book. But anyway, that's a different subject for another video. But yes, I'm gonna treat the next few months of this year. I'm gonna be treating this year as though that's probably not gonna happen for another. At least not until the summer months. Maybe even later. But I cannot stay in this damn house forever. I don't know how I've been able to survive living here for as long as I have. So anyway, I finished raving and ranting about how small and how cramped this house is. But another weird thing though, and this is going to sound incredibly petty of me, another reason why I've been so quiet and I haven't made a video in yonks, it's the weather. The weather's been really depressing and cold. That's another thing. I think people need a sense of perspective in just how miserable British weather gets, especially in the winter time. Speaking as somebody who spent the winter of 2019 in Collingwood, Ontario, which is where it gets really cold, where we're talking minus 20 or minus 30 degrees Celsius, I can honestly say winter it's not that bad over there. Like, yes, there's plenty of snow, but that's what I like about it. In the UK, we don't get snow. We don't get snow during the winter. The air gets incredibly cold, and officially, our winters don't seem that cold. The lowest temperatures you'll see are something like 0 degrees, 1 or 2 degrees, but the wind chill factor makes it feel much colder than it really is. So in reality, it will say something like 0 degrees, 1 degrees, 2 degrees, but it will feel closer to minus 10 or minus 11. And the truth is, as a society, we don't really have the infrastructure to deal with it because we're used to much milder temperatures. So people don't really go around with 3 layers. And it's just not really the done thing. I do have a Parker jacket, but I'm too poor to get a new one. And this thing, I've had it for years now, and it's broken in places. And because of the disorganized and chaotic state of this house, I can't remember where I leave things. So if I have a thermal vest, which I don't, by the way, I can't remember where it is, or if it's on the ironing board, or if it's been mixed up with somebody else's belongings. Oh yeah, that's another thing. A lot of my clothes end up missing because other people come and nick them and think that it's theirs. So what's really depressing about our winters, it's not just that we don't get snow, it's that it is a lot colder than we think, but we seem to be, as a society, we're collectively in denial about how cold and how bleak our winters are. And thirdly, if you have sensitive skin, like I do, for instance, if you're eczema prone, that's another thing. If you get chafed lips, you have to constantly put moisturizer on your lips, well, that's another thing that bothers me about winter. The reduced sunlight as well, that is something that I really don't appreciate about. Yeah. And not to mention, we've been having a number of storms, pretty fierce storms. So normally, times where I would go outside and do a video log, or just go and get some fresh air, well, you can't really do that in the middle of a storm. Not in the middle of a huge storm, unless you're a glutton for punishment. Because the best time to go out for a walk and clear your head is during calm weather. Yeah. But when the wind is absolutely blowing against you, and you have to really march against the wind. It's just more convenient to stay indoors. So yeah, that's what I wanted to make a video about. Why I haven't been making videos, it's because of this house, which is really becoming a prison now, and the miserable bleakness of our winter. Lately, I will say, I think the temperature has been improving. Like all of a sudden, I think when January 14th came around, for some reason, when I stepped outside, it didn't feel as lethally cold as it did just weeks before. So I think that could be a sign that things are changing, and I hope that I'm not wrong. I hope that we don't get into February and suddenly it's no more sunshine and it's just constant rain and wind and pissing cats and dogs. But yeah, no. It's this weather. It's the fact that I'm frustrated because I have no immediate control over. It's because I don't have any real effective control over my immediate surroundings and peripherals. And that's the thing. If you really want to retain control of your mental health, the best thing you can do is control your immediate surroundings and environment, because they all influence your mental health. This is why advice that, like Jordan Peterson's advice, clean your room, is such good advice, is because it does kind of work. It will not absolutely fix your life, but it will make you feel a little bit better. That's what I'm saying. So I'm going to be saving up a bit of cash until I've reached an arbitrary figure of savings. I'm thinking maybe £3,000 or £4,000. I'll give it more and more thought, depending on what's possible and what happens, etc. And then I'm going to move out. The good news is there are some properties in and around close-ish to where I live, where I can rent a room for something like £500 a month, or less than 500. I could probably afford to live there. Although I would need to speak to the landlord and, talk about the terms of the lease, and hopefully, if everything goes well, I'll update you if my plan is successful. Then I'll be able to make a fresh start, and I'll probably be a bit more upbeat, positive, and constructive about my life and about how everything's going. But until that happens, I'm gonna remain stuck here. My video output's gonna be erratic and irregular, but I will try and keep you as updated as often as I can. But we'll just have to suck it and see. Anyway, thanks for suffering this long video rant with me. Hope you guys are doing okay. This has been Tracking. Take care.